Corporate Finance Excel Practice Problem. In this presentation, we're going to work a practice problem in Excel related to making an income statement including earnings per share. Time to take a stance with corporate finance. Here we are in Excel. We have our information on the left-hand side. We're going to put that information into the blue area into our worksheet on the right-hand side. Notice we're very zoomed in here. We're at 205%. So the way to zoom in is you can hit the plus button on this thing, or you can hold down Control and use the zoom in or scroll button on your mouse to zoom in. We also have two tabs. We're going to be working two tabs here. One will work a little bit slower. Second one a little bit faster. We're going to work this one a little bit faster than prior presentations because we're speeding up a bit as we get used to just the format of the income statement. One of the major financial statements, the timing statement, the statement that shows us performance over time. So we're going to start off with this. We're going to think about the format of the income statement. We have our scrambled list of accounts over here. We're going to put them in the proper order and add the subtotals and basically our multi-step income statement. We will also be adding the earnings per share calculation at the bottom of the income statement this time. So we're going to be picking up. First, we're going to start off with that top line number. You might call it top line, bottom line number, top line number on the income statement. How did we do? What's the performance? We generated revenue, sales, income, all names that could be called on the top line depending on the type of company we are working with. Might be called fees earned or something like that. I'm going to say equals. We're going to pick up the revenue or sales item. Then I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to be picking up the 950,000. I'm going to be using formulas whenever possible. You want to be in the best practice of using formulas whenever you can. If you just type in the 950,000, that's okay, but you're not practicing Excel like you kind of would be better if you were practicing Excel. So then we're going to have the second line item, which is cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold is going to be equal to the cost of goods sold. We're going to pick up the number, which is going to be equal to the 410,000. And remembering that the cost of goods sold represents us consuming inventory in order to help generate revenue. Therefore, cost of goods sold will be there if we sell inventory. If we don't, like a service company, like a law firm, bookkeeping firm, don't sell things, but services rather. Therefore, no cost of goods sold. But if we sell things, cost of goods sold is a very important account. It's going to be our largest expense item. Therefore, we put it up top, bring it up top. We then have a subcategory, that being gross profit, related to it. Let's go ahead and yellow off some of these numbers as we find a home for them. So I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to right click. I'm going to make it yellow with the paint can yellow. If it's not on yellow, you can choose this thing, but the yellow is usually the default color because it's the most traditional color, I think, for highlighting stuff. And then we're going to do the same for the cost of goods sold. Next, we're going to have our subcategory. That's going to be the gross profit. Don't mix up the gross profit with the net income, the bottom line number. This is just a stop along the way. It's that stop that represents the revenue minus the cost of goods sold. This is going to be equal to then up to the 950 minus up 1, the 410, or equals E2 minus E3. That's going to be the 540. We'd like to have an underline to indicate that we have a reference or a calculation happening here. Therefore, I'm going to go on the 410, go up to the Home tab, Font Group. Then we're going to go to the Underline button to put an underline there. Next, we're going to have the selling and admin and the other operating expenses, which will include selling and administrative expenses and depreciation. So this is going to be equal to the selling and admin. Note as you go through this, again, it might be called S&A even if it was most abbreviated. People might just call it S&A, selling and administrative. It's already abbreviated down to selling and admin here. Also note that you may see the word expense next to it oftentimes, but you may not, because if it's on the income statement and it's in the expense area, then it's kind of redundant to call it an expense. So some items that are going to be here on the income statement may not say expense next to all of them. If they do, it's nice. It'll be helpful for problems such as these, but it's a bit redundant to do so, may not be done in practice. Okay, so this is going to be equal to the 61,000. We're going to go ahead and highlight this. So we will select it, right click on it. We're going to make it yellow. We will then go to the depreciation. So I'm going to say equal to the depreciation. That's going to be representing us the cost of the equipment, depreciable assets that we're allocating. We'll talk more about the calculation of depreciation at a later point. But right now, we just know it's going to be an expense, and expenses are going to be going down here on the income statement. Let's go ahead and highlight that. right click and yellow it off. So we're going to yellow it off. Then we're going to have a subcategory for the operating profit. The operating profit. This is the profit from the operations. This is a good measure of performance is what we're looking at here. So this can be calculated a couple different ways. One could be hitting the equal sign up 3 times on the arrow, minus up twice, the 61,000, minus up once, the 18,000 or the 461,000. If you double click on this cell, you can see the reference here. You can also see it in the formula tab up top, E4 minus E5 minus E6. Another way you can calculate that, good practice to do so, would be equals, and we're going to take that gross profit, the last stop we had along the way, getting to the bottom line number of the net income, minus, then we're going to embed that sum function, SUM. I'm going to say shift 9 for the bracket, and then I'm going to use the arrows. I'm going to go on that 61,000, hold down shift, and hit the down arrow 1 time. So we're selecting those 2 cells. You can also do that with, of course, the mouse, but if you get better with the keyboard, you're more geeky, and more geeky is good because then you're faster, and that's kind of the objective here. So we're going to subtract those 2 out. That's going to give us the 461. Then we're going to put an underline on the 18. So the 18,000 needs an underline. So we're going to go up to the home tab up top, the font group. We're going to put an underline in there for it. So now we have the operating profit. Let's pick up then the interest expense, not included in the operating profit because the only reason we have the interest expense is not due to our operations, but due to the financing we need for it. So we decided to put the interest expense down below and have a different subcategory for the operating profit that does not include it. So then we're going to be taking up the interest expense, which is the 43,000, represents us basically financing something, taking out some type of loan in order to finance our operations. Let's go ahead and yellow off the interest expense, highlighting it and making it yellow. Let's put an underline under the interest expense because the next item is going to be the earnings before taxes. So to do so, we'll go on the 43,000 home tab up top, font group. We'll hit the underline so that because that's how you put a line under it. And then we're going to say we have the earnings before taxes. Earnings before taxes is going to be equal to the last subtotal we were on, which was the operating profit, equals up twice, minus the interest expense up once, or E7 minus E8. That's going to give us the 418,000. Then we can go ahead and pick up our taxes. So we're going to be picking up the taxes now. That's always the last item that we need to calculate on the income statement because it will change based on what the earnings are. We're going to basically estimate the taxes based on basically the net income before taxes or the earnings before taxes. Taxes then being the 50,000, so we'll pick up the 50,000. Finally, we get to our bottom line number, which is basically the net income number. We're not going to stop there because we're going to calculate the earnings per share this time, which we can tack on to the bottom of the income statement. But when you think of the bottom line of the income statement, you're typically thinking of net income, earning after taxes. So we're going to call it earnings after taxes here. You can call it net income after taxes, top line revenue, bottom line net income. And so then we're going to say this is going to be equal to then up twice, the 418,000 minus up once. That's going to be the 50,000. That's going to give us the 368,000. There's our bottom line earnings after taxes. Let's give it an underline because it's an important number. We always draw 2 lines under the bottom line. The bottom line gets 2 lines. So we're on the home tab. We're on the font group. We want to hit the underline button, but we want the drop down this time so we can put the 2 lines this time because that's super important number, super important. So then we're going to calculate the earnings per share. We're just going to kind of tack this on to the bottom calculation of the earnings per share. So to calculate the earnings per share, we have to take out the preferred dividends first. So we're going to say this is going to be equal to the preferred stock dividends. We may not always have preferred stock dividends because companies will have common stockholders, which are the owners of the company. They have voting rights. May also have preferred stock issued. Sounds like it's better than common stock. It is in a way. In some ways, you get paid first in case of dividends, but you don't have the same voting rights, and therefore they're not really kind of like the owners of the company that you would typically think of. So you're always going to have common stockholders, not always have preferred stockholders. If you do have preferred stockholders, you got to remove how much you're going to pay them because the preferred means they typically get paid first. So we're going to take the preferred stockholders. I'm going to go ahead and yellow out the preferred stockholders here. And then we're going to have the earnings that are going to be available to the common stockholders, which are basically the owners of the business. So now this is what's left over of the earnings that go to the common stockholders equals up, the 368,000 minus up once the 80,000, there's going to be the 288. There's the 288 that is now available for the common stockholders. Now we're going to pick up the shares that are outstanding. The shares outstanding is going to be this item. The number was 52,000 shares. So then we're going to divide to get the earnings per share. So we're going to take the earnings per share. You can type it in there. I'm going to paste it in there. Earnings per share will then be equal to up twice the 288,000 divided by, which is the dash here, or forward slash, and then up once the shares outstanding. So the 288,000 divided by the 52. Now notice it doesn't have any decimals. We would like to see decimals with the earnings per share. I've rounded these numbers up top because we don't need decimals. Let's go ahead and add the decimals to this number because we would like to see them. Let's go to the Home tab. We're going to go to the Numbers group. We're going to hit this little Add Decimals. Now note it might have more than, just 2 decimals, but we often round it to 2 decimals here. So I'm going to keep it at the 2 decimals, recognizing that if I have any calculation that uses that cell in it, it's not really 55.54, but rather 5.54 something something. It's rounded to 5.54. And if I was to calculate something using that cell, then it will calculate using the actual number, not 5.54, cut off at that point. Also note that the earnings after taxes, as we saw here, if it was a single step income statement, let's do that calculation as well. It would just simply be equal to revenue minus all the expenses, minus the cost of goods sold, minus the selling and admin, minus the depreciation, minus the interest, minus the taxes. And there we have the 368,000. If you want to then see what's included in that cell, you can double click on it. There's all the numbers in it. Or you can use this feature up top, which we looked at in a prior presentation on how to get to it. Notice it's in the Formulas tab right here. I have included it in the shortcuts, and you can use this feature to then see what's included in that formula. Nice tool to have. I recommend using it. Let's do this again. Let's do it a bit faster. Doing it again, we're going to do it a bit faster here. So similar problem, similar format, and we're just going to put the new numbers in it. So we start off income statement, revenue, top line. Revenue is going to, or sales, equals A3. Number is going to be equal to that 1,490,000. Let's go ahead and yellow off this line item because we have found a home for it. Next line on the income statement, if they sell inventory, will be cost of goods sold typically. So let's pick up the cost of goods sold. We're going to go in E. This is cell E3. E3, we're going to say this will be equal to the 950,000. I'm going to go ahead and select the cost of goods sold, right click on it, yellow it off. Would like an underline under this number. Therefore, we're going to go to the Home tab. We're going to go to the Font group. We're going to hit the underline drop down and select the underline. Then we're going to pick up the gross profit, which we'll simply type in there. I'm going to copy and paste it myself, but you could type it. Then we're going to subtract out these numbers. This is a stop along the way to get to the bottom line. The net income or earnings after taxes equals up twice the 1,490,000 minus up once the 950, giving us the 540,000. Next, operating expenses, which includes equals the selling and admin, and then the depreciation. So selling and admin is going to have the amount of the 43,000. We will then select it and right click and yellow it off. Then the depreciation. So depreciation is going to be equal to the depreciation, or A8. The amount will be equal to the 28,000. Then we're going to highlight it, right click on it, yellow it off. I'm going to put an underline underneath it because now we want to get to the operating profit. So that's going to be another subcategory along the way to the bottom line, to the net income. So we're going to select it. We're going to go to the Home tab, Font group. We're going to put the underline underneath the 28,000. Then we're going to pick up the operating profit. The operating profit, we can calculate this 2 ways you can recall. The gross profit minus the selling and admin minus the depreciation. One way equals the 540,000 minus up twice, the 43,000 minus up once, the 28,000, or E4 minus E5 minus E6. Or we can calculate it as equal to the 540,000 minus the SUM, the sum formula. Shift 9, this is a very important formula. I'm then holding down Shift as I'm on the 28,000, hitting the up arrow 1 time so I can use the arrows. You can also do that with the mouse, but the arrows are more geeky, which is better. And then you're going to say Control 0, closing up the brackets, and enter. 2 ways to calculate that operating profit number. Then we're going to be picking up the interest. Interest is for the financing. This is interest, basically rent on the money that was loaned to us, and this is going to be equal to the $32,000. Once again, we're going to put an underline under it because we're going to have another subtotal, that being earning before profits. So we're going to go to the Home tab. We're going to go to the font group. We're going to put an underline under it. Then we're going to have the earnings before taxes. So you're going to type it in there. I'm going to copy and paste it in there so you don't have to watch me type. And this is going to be equal to, up twice, the last pit stop we were at, the operating profit, the pit stop on the way down, the bottom line number, that being net income, minus up once the interest income. That's going to give us the $437,000. Next, we're going to be picking up the taxes. We'll be picking up the taxes now. That's always kind of like at the bottom because the taxes need to be calculated based on the income before the taxes, because that's how taxes work, and they really mess up, the calculations. Makes it all complicated. But anyways, we're going to select the taxes and make it yellow. We're going to put an underline on the 102 here, which we're going to do by going to the Home tab font group and put the underline on it. We finally got to the bottom line number, which you can call net income after taxes or earnings after taxes. Top line revenue, bottom line net income or earnings after taxes. It will be calculated as equals up twice the 437 minus up once the 102. That gives us the 335,000. There's the bottom line number. To represent the bottom line number, that's the one that gets the double lines under, the 2 underlines. That's found in the Home tab, font group, underline, but now we want the drop down instead of the button, so we could say the D with the 2 lines, which is the double underline for super emphasis on it, because it's important. So then we're going to go to the preferred stock. We're going to be calculating now the earnings per share. So the earnings per share, we got to subtract out the preferred stock if the company has any. They won't always have the preferred stock, but if they do, then we're going to subtract it out. And that'll give us the earnings available to the common stockholders. The common stockholders are basically what we think of as the owners because they have voting rights, whereas the preferred stockholders don't, even though they have preference to get paid first most of the time. So this is going to be equal to the the 335 earnings after taxes minus what has to go to those preferred people. And that means we have the 246,000 that can go to the owners now, which are the common stockholders. And then we're going to pick up the shares outstanding, which I could just say equals and pick up the shares outstanding over here. And I should be highlighting and making these yellow. That one should be yellow. We did this one. That should be yellow. And we did all this should be yellow. I've been totally behind on the yellow-ing. So this is going to be equal then to the outstanding shares, the 107. And then we can calculate the earnings per share, which we're just going to simply type in there. I'm going to copy and paste it. And the earnings per share is going to be equal to the earnings available to the common stockholders divided by the number of shares, which is the 107. So if you see that calculation, E14 divided divided by the E15. It's 2. We would like to see decimals here, though. This is a decimal area that we would like to see. So we're going to go to the Home tab. We're going to go to the numbers group. We're going to add a few decimals. So notice it's really this, right? You usually bring it out to basically 2 decimals. But again, notice that's not exact. Excel, the number that's in Excel is more exact than that, but we're only showing this amount of it at this time. So keep that in mind if you were to use it in a calculation. Also note that this earning before taxes, if you were to do this in a single step, getting down to the net income, you can say revenue minus cost of goods sold, minus the selling and admin, minus the depreciation, minus the interest expense, minus the taxes, and you'd get to the same number. If you want to see what's included in it, you can hit this button up top, and that kind of shows you everything in there. All the other stops are just stops along the way. They're just subtotals as we get down to the net income, subtotals that give us more detailed subtotals that can help us when we do analysis such as ratio analysis.